Hello, good morning and good afternoon. I'm Michael Kimmel, RPB's Executive Director, and I'm thrilled to thank and welcome you for joining us on today's webinar. Joining me in the discussion is Alice Gunn, our Chief Financial Officer, Robert Perry, Director of Participant and Employer Services, and Stephanie Berger, Director of Marketing and Communications. We also want to announce that Chase Boucher, who has joined our team as our new Employer Account Associate, who's taking over for Julia Kim. Julia moved on to California, and we wish her luck in her new endeavors out there. Before we get started, just a few housekeeping details. We will be recording this session and we'll be posting it in the portal, and we'll also be sending you the recording via email. You can now see today's agenda. Among other things, we're going to highlight what you need to know with the start of the new plan year, LTD enrollment, and more. We'll also cover some exceptions you may have. But we want to be as interactive as possible, so we will take your questions along the way and at the end. You can send us your questions anytime by clicking on the Q&A button located at the bottom of your screen. Before I turn the webinar over to Alice, I wanted to just mention a couple of the primary reasons for making the change to MyRPB from PTS. PTS, and for those of you who use it, know that it was built on using older technology, and it has become difficult to maintain. In addition, PTS was also not able to support the enhancements we wanted to and have made, as well as the new products we're introducing. Alice?
Thanks, Michael. Another one of our objectives when we designed our new system was to give you, the employers, more control over the people, the products, everything in the system. We also wanted to give you more information at your fingertips, and we wanted to reduce the paperwork that RPB had required in the past. And so we were keen to reduce forms. So what can you do now in the new portal? One of the changes you'll see is that you can track employer and employee contributions separately. You may say, hey, we used to do that before. We used to take that information from you before, but now we require that you tell us when you make a payment, whether it's an employer stream of money or an employee contribution stream of money. You can also now, a big complaint we'd heard about PTS was if you went to try to schedule out payments, you couldn't schedule things past May, maybe even April. So now we've made it so that you can schedule 12 months of payments at a time. We also made it so that anytime there's been a change of contribution or compensation information in the system, or you've added new people or terminated people, that those changes will automatically flow through to the scheduled payments that you've created. We changed our system to start limit testing on a calendar year basis as opposed to a plan year basis. And what that translates to you is that you may recall, some of you, that if the IRS changed their limits that went into effect January 1st, we often could not take in an increase in contributions until July 1st the following year. And so now we can take in higher contributions as soon as the IRS limit goes into effect. You'll also be able to see for the first time how much money, as we collect it, goes into the Rabbi Trust. You can go in and you have total control over employees leaving the plan, whether we're talking about terminations from the RPB pension plan or from the LTD plan. You'll see that we are, with this launch of the portal, we are launching a new product, the 403B Roth employee contribution product, which we'll talk about later. And you'll see that we've given a lot more control over enrollment and ending coverage and changing of coverage related to long-term disability. The final thing I wanted to highlight about what's new in the system is that we've provided out 5 years worth of history, whether it's contribution history, whether it's payment history. There's 5 years worth of data out there, And so if you're one of these employers who used to pay us by check a long time ago, we've even made check payments available to view on the payment screens. So you would be able to see the history. Okay, so the next screen, Stephanie, next slide, thanks. So for getting started, hopefully by now everyone has tried to log in to the new portal at this point. If you have, these screens should be familiar to you. We want to emphasize at this point, for anybody who hasn't heard this message yet, that our new portal was built in Google Chrome, and that is our preferred browser for accessing this portal. The portal will work on Microsoft Edge, on Firefox and Safari as well, but our preferred is definitely Chrome. And for all of you Internet Explorer people out there, that browser is no longer supported even by Microsoft. So this portal will not work on Internet Explorer, and we highly advise you to upgrade to a more recent browser. So you'll see that there's a home page and there's a dashboard. The home page is where you're going to land when you first log into the system. And there we're going to post any information that you need to know about our plan, any notices that we're sending out to people, deadlines that you may need to make, any communication that we want to have with you, you're going to find on the home page. And then on the home page, there's a link to the dashboard. And the dashboard is where all of the plan management and transactional type activity takes place. Let's go on to the next screen. So getting started. If you've logged in at this point, the first two things that we wanted you to do is to check on the users that we've set up for you. And we also wanted you to verify your primary contact. And you would do this by clicking on the Manage Employer Information tile. And one note is that we've defaulted all of the users to be administrative users. And if you wanted to disable one of your users from being an administrative user, you can edit that user and you'd see a little checkbox and you'd uncheck them. And if you uncheck someone, make them a non-administrative user, the two highlighted boxes here, the Manage Bank Account and the Manage Employer Information, will disappear. The non-administrative person will be able to do all the other types of transactional work, but they cannot touch your bank account and they cannot add or disable users. So that's at your fingertips, just so you know. So we wanted you to double check to make sure that we had all the right users, and if you see somebody that is there that left your organization ages ago maybe, please disable them, and if there are other people that should be added, please add them. And then just make that part of your routine. You know, if you yourself are going to change jobs someday, make sure that someone else gets activated as a portal user before you leave. Okay, so next screen.
Thank you, Alice. Now we're into retirement, and the new plan year is just upon us. It'll start, the 2019 plan year will start on July 1st. So the first thing to do is, if you're going to be on the left-hand side of this particular slide, if you have new hires that are not already in the retirement plan, you need to notify us so that we can begin the enrollment process. There are eligibility requirements, and before they can be linked to your account as an employee, they must be enrolled. If they're already in the retirement plan, then we'll find them and we'll simply link them to your account so that you can then begin to manage their data and contribution information for the coming plan year. Now, you can add LTD participants, employees, at any time under the Manage Plan Participant screen without contacting us for enrollment or whatever.
As long as they're new hires.
As long as they're new hires, and if they are individuals that have been working with you for a number of years, for instance, or beyond 60 days prior to when you're going into the system, then you have to wait for an open enrollment period, and we'll talk about that in a bit. So we suggest that you terminate any employees from the plan that won't be going forward in the new 2019 plan year. And that's done under the Manage Plan Participants tile. We also suggest that you add and change any employee information for current plan participants, and that's done under the Adjust Compensation and Contribution record tile. Here's where if a new employee is enrolled in the plan and linked to your account, you would find them and you would create a new record for them. That's the new participant. Existing participants, you would simply adjust their salary and contribution amounts for the new plan year and make sure that you change the effective date to July 1st of 2018, which is the start date of the plan year. We then suggest you go to the View Retirement Plan Summary screen to just check that the information you've input into the system is correct and that the expected contributions are calculated on the right numbers that you put in. These contributions are calculated on a plan year basis. If your fiscal year is not the same as a plan year, then these amounts will differ. Finally, in order to schedule plan payments, you would go to the Make Retirement Plan Payments screen, and you have the option in this system to make a one-time payment and or schedule employer and employee payments out over the 12-month plan year or quarterly, whatever you prefer.
We just received a question. I think that we should answer this question now. It says, when do we terminate an employee? Do you want to answer that or shall I?
Go ahead.
Okay. So you would terminate an employee from the plan basically as of the last date that they are with you from a payroll perspective. So if you, let's, you know, because I know our own employees, they accrue a lot of vacation, and so maybe they leave, you know, their last day in the office might be a couple weeks before their actual last day on payroll. What you really want to do is put in the last date that you're paying them through. And so that's if they're retiring, that's if they're changing jobs, basically. If they're not leaving your organization, you do not terminate them. There are other things that you would do, and we'll talk about those later.
So the next, we'll go on to the next slide with respect to contributions. I've just been presented with another question. Email address for new hires would simply come to me, Robert Perry. My email address is rperry, P-E-R-R-Y, @rpb.org. And my contact information is also on our general website, and I believe it's on the community page when you log into the MyRPB website as well. If we go on to the next slide, we talk about the contribution limits in our 403B plan. These are established by the IRS, and for 2018, you can see on this chart the contribution amounts for the limits for employer, the employee elective salary deferrals, and the combined. It's fairly straightforward. I think if there are any questions on that, you can consult with us directly. I should also note that if these contribution amounts, or contribution limits, I should say, are exceeded by the contributions you make, then the money flows into what's known as a rabbi trust. The rabbi trust is a non-qualified deferred compensation plan that's different from our qualified defined contribution plan, the 403B. So next slide, Stephanie. So employer contributions, employer-employee, it bears reminding you that there are two different types of employees to a plan such as this, employer money and employee money, and our new system tracks both. So when you go in and enter a payment, you'll have to indicate whether the funds are employer dollars or dollars that are being withheld from the employee's salary through the elective salary deferral method. If you exceed the contribution limits for the 403B for the given year, the money again will flow into the rabbi trust, and you'll be able to see this on the retirement plan summary page. There'll be a little indication that there is money flowing into the rabbi trust for that particular plan, for that particular fiscal year, as a matter of fact, excuse me, calendar year. The IRS contribution limit testing is done on a calendar year basis, and our data in MyRPB will be tracking it as of January 1st, 2018. So on to the next slide. So here's a situation. We're now talking about other situations for addressing compensation and contribution information. We're going to be reviewing what happens when an employee decides to stop contributions, departing employees, termination, etc., and then what the impact of that is with respect to putting payments on hold, etc. But we'll go through these individually right now. You can edit compensation and contribution information for a participant only in the current plan year and any future plan years. If you need to make an edit or change to a plan year prior to the current plan year, you're going to need to contact the RPB directly. So in other words, in the third bullet here, you have until June 30th right now to make any edits or changes for the current 2018 plan year, but it will expire on June 30th. You'll no longer be able to make a change after that. You go into the Adjust Compensation and Contribution screen to make changes for the current and any future plan years. Next slide. So here's a situation where an employee may wish to stop contributions. Prime example as to why might be that they simply wish to have more disposable net income on a regular basis because they might be purchasing a home or require those funds for some other reason. In order to accomplish this, you would go into Adjust Compensation and Contributions. You'd click on Add or Edit the Record, and you'd enter a zero contribution amount for the plan and enter an effective date for that. And that will keep the record in the file, but show that there will be no more contributions being made until you go back in and add a new record for that employee, should they wish to resume making contributions. I think we can go to the next slide. So employee departures are listed on this slide. And our recommendation is before you begin to manage the account that you should know, if you know what the termination date is, you should try to calculate what you're going to owe before they go. So this is example here is an employee leaving in May. In April, you can go ahead and go into Adjust Compensation or manage the employee's account and enter a future dated termination in April, and you'll be able to see the remaining balance due and process a payment that way in order to avoid having to click on Request a Refund. The RPB, MyRPB system is really driven by the termination date of your employees, and we'll explain that a little bit more in the subsequent slides. If you are terminating an employee and you wish to make a contribution after the employee's termination date, there is a box there that you see highlighted down the right in pink that says Post-Termination Contributions. You should select that box, and that box will allow you to go in and make a one-time final payment after the termination date. Terminating the employee will cancel any scheduled payments. They'll take it to zero, but you'll be able to make a one-time contribution if you wish for that particular account, but you have to check this box. If you haven't checked this box, you won't be able to schedule a subsequent post-termination payment.
And just a note on that, the IRS allows sometimes that can also be used for people who are retiring who may receive a retirement package, and the IRS allows a retirement package to be paid out over a 5-year period after an employee is terminated. So this also facilitates us to be able to continue to take in payments that might be related to a package for a period of time after the person has left the organization.
Yes, thank you, Alice. So now if we go on to other situations here, payments on hold. Once you make an adjustment to an individual's record, the MyRPB system automatically recalculates the scheduled payments. You will need to review all these payments will be put on hold, and you will need to review those payments that are on hold and release the hold if the payment is correct, and or cancel the payment if the payment is not correct and you have to re-enter the data. And
we actually show you side by side. We'll show you what the old value was that it was changed from, as well as the new value. So you can actually just type over right there what if you wanted to revert to the old value, you can just type it in and save it and release it from hold. You don't have to cancel the payment to do
Right.
that.
I think we skipped a slide. Yes, there we go. So payments on hold example, employee leaves in March and there are 3 of 12 payments that remain. You would terminate the employee and manage plan payments. And again, we would place the remaining payments on hold because the system adjusts the contributions to 0. And that's assuming that the termination date is before the end of the plan year. And here again, you can release the hold and enter a new payment amount, or cancel the payment and make a new one-time payment for that individual. But you have to be certain that you have clicked off make post termination payment when you terminate the employee.
Okay, so we're going to stop here and take some questions.
So the first question is, when you set up new salaries for July 1, 2018 and add employee contributions of $18,500 for the calendar year 2018, how does that change for new employee limits for 2019 because the plan year spans two calendar years?
So when you put in a new record as of July 1st, then our system is going to assume that that is the record that is in effect until you tell us that it's no longer in effect by adding an additional record after that. So let's say that you put in contributions of $18,500 as of July 1st, because that's our best information that we have from the IRS at this point in time. If the IRS came out in October and said, oh, we're going to increase employee contributions to a maximum of $19,000, then starting January 1st, then what you would do is go in and add a new record for that employee effective date 1/1/2019 and change it to read 19,000 as opposed to 18,500.
The next question is, when you look at the adjust compensation and contribution screen, should the salary shown be based on the calendar year or the plan year?
Well, the salary should be based on what your contract is with that employee, and typically our participants base that on a fiscal year, which coincides with our plan year.
Right, but RPB is a prime example where the fiscal year, because we ourselves don't have a fiscal year of July to June. So what we suggest, our system is really driven by the effective date of these records. So we would want you to be entering your salary changes with the effective date of when those salary changes go into place. So if your fiscal year happens to match our plan year, that's terrific, and your effective start date for those salaries would be July 1st, 2018. But let's say your fiscal year starts October 1st, then you would let the current record ride. You wouldn't necessarily make any changes now, but sometime in September, you'd probably be adding new salary records for that person with an effective date of October 1, 2018. And our system will recalculate what is due in our plan year based on those effective dates.
Next question, can I join after working here over 10 years?
There are certain instances where that, in order to be eligible for the RPB retirement plan, you must work for a URJ affiliated, or an RPB, I should say, an RPB eligible employer, which is generally a URJ affiliated congregation. You must also be a member of one of the professional organizations shown on our website. For instance, temple administrators, it's NADA, clergy, it's CCAR, and for educators, ARJE, and there are several others. Those are the eligibility rules that must be met before one can participate in the plan. There are some unusual circumstances that might be beyond that, but you'll have to present that to us and we'll get back to you with respect to eligibility.
And so Robert outlined the eligibility for the pension plan, but for long-term disability, all you have to do is be working for a URJ congregation, and anybody can be in the LTD program, whether you're a member of a professional organization or not.
what is the minimum contribution?
I don't think we have a minimum contribution amount from either the employer or the employee.
There are also a few other quick questions. One is, will a printed form version of this be available? So there will be slides posted that you can print out. The other is, what is the name of Julia's replacement? That's Chase Boucher. And his email address is B like boy, OUCHIE @rpb.org.
And his direct dial is
646-884-9897. And there was a question about return on investment. And in the portal, we will be posting a link to our fact sheets and our annual returns. So you'll be able to see that information there.
Okay. So I realized after the fact that I skipped over one important point for all of you. When you log into the MyRPB and you navigate into the dashboard, which is where all the transactional activity takes place, you'll notice that there's a little link on the right-hand side that's called, that says walk me through or walk me. And so we have embedded throughout our system an online guidance and training facility. And so if you find yourself getting stuck anywhere along the way and you're not quite sure how to do something, please try to click on Walk Me, and you can select from a number of different options of what you want help and assistance going through.
When will the new salaries for 7/1/18 be able to be added to the system?
You can do that today.
Right.
Chase's email address is cboucher, BOUCHIE @rpb.org. And he's also listed on our contacts page at rpb.org, our website. We should also note, Stephanie, that there is a tutorial posted on the rpb.org homepage. I think the tutorial is also available on the welcome page as you go into MyRPB. It gives a number of details on how to operate the system and navigate through the screens, etc. Happy to send that to you as a PDF if you want to send me an email.
Right. Okay, are there any other questions?
Is LTD available to part-time employees?
So yes, it is. The requirement that we have in our plan document says that you have to be working at least 18 hours at the employer to be eligible for long-term disability.
Again, that's 18 hours per week, right, Alice?
Yes.
Yep.
Sorry. Yes. Okay. So with that, we're going to move on. We're going to, Stephanie, can we move to the Roth? Okay, so we are very, very excited to be launching the Roth 403B option with the launch of this new portal. What the Roth 403B option is, it allows your staff to be able to contribute to the 403B plan on a post-tax basis. Right now, everything that you've been sending to us, that you've collected from the employee's salary as their deferral contribution, has always been on a pre-tax basis. Roth allows for post-tax contributions as well. So we will accept both pre-tax and post-tax contributions going forward, and it's really up to the employee to decide for themselves what kind of contribution they would like to make. And it also, though, is important for the employers to know that if you are going to support your employees to be able to make post-tax contributions, the most important thing for you to do is to set a post-tax deduction, set that up with your in your payroll system, or if you have a payroll provider, contact your payroll provider to set that up. So the benefits of Roth, it allows you to, like I said, make post-tax contributions. And the beauty of that is that as long as those contributions are invested and stay in the plan for 5 years, then all the earnings that accrue on those contributions will, when you go and when those participants have a distribution in their retirement, the earnings and the contributions themselves, that whole distribution will be tax-free. So that is a really powerful tool for someone who has, quite a few years left before they retire, that they can actually have their earnings accrue and know that it's going to be tax-free in your retirement. So like I said, you have to set that up with your payroll provider to make sure you do a post-tax deduction. And you probably need to, we have a salary reduction agreement that we've put out in our portal for you to be able to use. And that just allows an employee to be able to check off whether they want pre-tax or post-tax contributions, or both. There are people who may, contribute 50-50 of their money into that. Employer money will always be pre-tax. So we're only talking about the employee's elective deferrals here. And you would enter that information. If you had employees who wanted to take advantage of Roth, you would enter their contribution rates, their Roth contribution rates, in the Adjust Compensation and Contribution screen, which we have highlighted here on the left-hand side. And then when you remit the payment to us, it is extraordinarily important, whether you're doing one-time payments or using our scheduler, that the post-tax contributions are put into the Roth post-tax contribution bucket. If that employee also has pre-tax, please make sure it's put in the pre-tax bucket. And we need to be able to track that information, which is one of the reasons that we had separated out the employer and employee monies on payment.
And Alice, we may get this question, but the IRS max limitations on contributions to the 403B, either pre or post-tax, are combined, correct?
Correct. So, 18.5 is the limit for people under 50, whether that's all Roth, whether that's all pre-tax, or some combination. It cannot exceed 18.5.
We have a Roth question. Are we legally required to offer the Roth 403B option?
No, you are not. It really is your decision whether you choose as the employer to support this product. We have had a lot of demand for it from our participants asking about it. So we have made it available to you and to them. We will be sending out communications to our participants, all participants in our plan, active participants, that we are now offering this, but we tell people to check with their employer to see if their employer can support it or not.
Okay, two more general questions. One, if a new rabbi has been affiliated with another URJ congregation, how do you add them to your LTD and pension?
Well, to add them to your pension, you simply need to notify our office. If they're in our system, as I said before, we can simply link them to your employer account in MyRPB, so you can manage their compensation and contribution information for the plan year that we are approaching. If they're also in the system, you can add them to the LTD simply on your own through Manage LTD Participants.
What is the limit of contributions if you are over 50?
So the over 50, the IRS allows people who are 50 and older to do a $6,000 catch-up on top of the 18.5. So as of January 1st, 2018, that means that the contribution limit for 50 and older of your employee deferral money is $24,500. The total contribution limit for people under 50 is $55,000, and so by default, that means that if you're 50 and older, again, you add $6,000 to that number, and it's $61,000 is your total contribution limit.
Next is about Roth again. Is Roth an employee-only contribution? If you're part-time, are you eligible to contribute? And is Roth pre or post-tax?
So the Roth option, again, it only applies to the salary deferrals made by employees out of their own paychecks. All employer money that comes into the plan will always be pre-tax. And so are you eligible if you're a part-time person to participate in the pension plan? It goes back to the eligibility requirements. You have to be working at least 18 hours per week, but you also have to be a good standing member with one of the professional organizations. And if you are if you meet both criteria, then you are eligible to participate in our plan. Even if your employer is not contributing to our plan, you yourself can always sign up for an elective deferral out of your own paycheck. Now, Roth is by definition post-tax. And if you don't elect Roth, we will be assuming you're sending us pre-tax dollars. Okay. So if that's all the questions for this point, let's move on. We want to introduce to you the long-term disability coverage the new features that we've added to our system. We are opening up semi-annual enrollment, just for everybody on the phone. We're opening up semi-annual enrollment next Monday on June 18th. But you know, the good news is that we have, with the implementation of this new system, we are allowing for rolling enrollment. So it used to be that if you were hired, you know, after January 15th, but before July 1st, you had to wait until July 1st to be able to sign up for LTD with us. Now the employers can enroll someone in LTD as soon as they join your organization, whether that's in February, March, April, May, etc. And so all you have to do is go to the Manage Plan Participant screen, and there's all sorts of LTD functionality built in there. You can add new participants. You can, this is where you would terminate somebody, whether it's terminating, again, the definition of termination is they've left your organization. So you would come in here to terminate people, whether it's from the retirement plan or the LTD plan. You can come in here. We have people who maybe decide that they don't want to renew their coverage, even though they're not leaving your organization. You would come into this screen and you would end their LTD coverage. You can, for LTD only people, you can update someone's salary on this screen. And you can also change their waiting period from 90 days to 180 days or vice versa. So all of that is embedded into this screen. And what you should know is, if you'll see that there are some fields that are green in the action columns and some are grayed out. So if we are not in an open enrollment period, you're going to see a lot of those LTD functionalities grayed out. And so if you see it grayed out, don't get frustrated. Just know that that means it's not the right time for you to be making a change to someone's paid LTD coverage. Because remember, our coverage goes from January 1st to December 31st. If someone renewed their coverage back in January, they signed up for the entire year. And so when we send out notices saying, hey, it's open enrollment, semi-annual open enrollment, just know that people are already in the plan as of January 1. So semi-annual open enrollment does not apply to them. But it gives you the opportunity to add people that maybe they aren't new hires, but they've decided that they want to be part of the LTD program. Then you would do that either during the semi-annual open enrollment in June and July, or you would wait until the annual enrollment, which doesn't start until December. So the open enrollments are really for people, employees who have been with you for a while who want to join in. Please be aware that once you've paid for coverage, you can't make a change to that coverage. You can't change waiting periods. You can't end the coverage until December, when we're in the annual enrollment. So all of that is available to you right there on the Managed Plan Participant screen. And I want to reiterate at this point, it doesn't really apply during semi-annual, but certainly during the annual period in December. If you know that you've got employees whose contracts expire June 30th, we encourage you to be putting in those future date determinations, because we will recalculate your LTD invoice based on those terminations. And that way you can pay exactly the right amount of money and not have to pay a full year of coverage and then ask for a refund later. Okay, so I think this just reiterates, what I had said, that you would go to the Managed Plan Participants to add, change, or end LTD coverage. Just like with our retirement plan, you could then go to the View LTD Plan Summary screen and just make sure that the right people are showing up for the right amounts, that you were expecting. And then the final step would be to go to the Make LTD Payment screen. And our system will only allow you to pay a full invoice. You cannot do a partial payment of an invoice, which just reiterates why it's important to put in a future date determination so that it's the right dollar amount that you're paying. And it also, you can pick, it defaults to paying everybody that has an open invoice. And if you wanted to selectively pay some people and others, you would have a chance to unselect the people you don't want to pay.
One LTD question, which is if you can just restate the difference between open enrollment and rolling enrollment.
So rolling enrollment allows you to add a participant to LTD as soon as that person is hired, regardless of when their hire date is. And you have 60 days from the time that they've joined your organization to do that enrollment. If you were to try to enroll that person on the 61st day, you're going to get a message saying, too late, you have to now wait for open enrollment. So open enrollment is the time when you can go and add people who are not new hires, and you have pent up interest in wanting to be in the plan, basically.
How do you request an LTD refund due to a termination?
So on the Managed Plan Participant screen, when you go to terminate somebody, you are presented with a number of options. Robert had highlighted for you before the post-termination contribution box that you could check off. But there's also two other prompts. If the person is in the retirement plan and in LTD, it will prompt you to, it'll ask you, do you want a pension refund? And it'll say, do you want an LTD refund? Or if they're not in pension and they're just in LTD, it'll say, do you want an LTD refund? And so you would check off these boxes at the time that you're entering the termination to tell us, RPB, that you would like to have a refund issued to you. Okay, so some tips. So tips for using the system successfully. I think one of the biggest points of confusion that people may have is, when do I edit a record? When we talk about a record, adding and editing records, we're really talking about compensation and contribution records. So when do you add versus when do you edit your compensation and contribution levels? So the key here is we show you the employee's compensation and contribution history. When you go into that screen, you can see years back of all sorts of different records, and you'll look for the record that has a status of current. That's the one that's in effect today. And so the real key here, I can't reiterate enough that our system is now being driven quite substantially off of effective dates. And so you need to look at the effective date of that current record. And let's say, for example, that the effective date is July 1, 2017, which is the beginning of the current plan year. If you look at that and you say, the change I want to make, yes, it applies to, it should be applicable, retroactively back to July 1st, 2017. It's a true change that should go into effect as of that same date. Then you want to edit the record. If the change you want to make is is a number that goes into effect after that effective date of that current record, then you don't edit that current record, you add a new record. So let's say someone received a pay increase on October 1st, because maybe it's a different fiscal year. You might see a current record that has an effective date of July 1, 2017 or July 1, 2016. You don't know, but you'd see a current effective date, and it's different than when you want to make the change. You would add a new record, and then you would put in the new effective date of 10/1/2018. So other points of confusion might be, as I discussed, when do you terminate an employee for LTD versus when do you end their coverage for LTD? Again, termination means they're leaving your organization. So if they are leaving because of retirement or they're leaving because they're changing jobs, you're going to want to terminate the employee. If they're wanting to end their coverage, but they're not leaving your organization because they just don't feel that they need disability insurance anymore, or they can't afford it anymore, then you would opt to end their coverage as opposed to terminating them. And when you opt to end their coverage, it always goes into effect as of January 1 the following year. Other things that you should know are when you're making one-time payments, or you're trying to set up a schedule of ACH payments in our system. If you're setting up a payment that's supposed to happen today, then you need to have that today's payment entered by 3:45 p.m. Eastern time, because the ACH cycle in the banking world starts at 4 p.m. Eastern time. If you've loaded a schedule, that's a future dated schedule that's off to go, then you're good to go. And on the day that payment is scheduled to run, you don't have to worry about this. Our system knows to pick it up. Coordinate payment frequency of employee contributions with your payroll to make reconciliation easier. So one of the driving factors, besides facilitating our ability to offer Roth contributions for employees, one of the reasons that we are emphasizing the breaking up of employer monies from employee monies when you remit monies to us on in payments is because we have had employers often have difficulty reconciling back to our system with their payroll system. And we have participants who have complained to us that when they look at their statements, they can't necessarily, see how much of it was their own money that they contributed to be able to reconcile to what they knew was taken out of their paycheck. So certainly we want to make sure that people can readily identify the stream of money coming to us to make reconciliation easier, both for you to back to your payroll system and for the participants as well. And I just want to take this opportunity to reiterate that with our offering semi-monthly payments now, on top of all the different payment options that we've offered, it's really to facilitate the employers to remit money to us in conjunction with their payroll cycle. There are rules out there about how much time can pass from when you take money out of someone's paycheck to when you have to remit it to an organization like us. And so, we find that by offering more frequencies to you, that you can remain better in compliance with the rules for remitting employee monies to us. And we really highly encourage, if you're not already remitting employee monies in a cycle that compares back to your payroll, to please try to get into this best practice of every time you collect money from payroll, remit the money to us. Okay. And then finally, I think this has been a commonly asked question: how do you print from our system? Because there is no printer icon. And it's really easy. It's the good old Microsoft keyboard, Control P. Any screen that you're on, if you hit Control P, it actually formats it very nicely into something that's readily printable. Okay.
For the Roth plan, can employees pay into it on their own at any time for any amount, or does it have to run through payroll and the same amount each time as it is post-tax?
It has to be, so Roth can, one of the ways that a Roth 403B differs substantially from a Roth IRA, for example, is on the, a Roth IRA has a lot of some pretty tight salary limits as to who can participate and who cannot. Whereas a Roth 403B does not have those limits. But for the government to have lifted those limits off of the Roth 403B, one of the requirements is that the money has to be remitted to us via your payroll. It cannot just be checks being sent in from employees. So, so you do have to work with your employer. Participants must work with their employers. They must set up payroll deductions. And usually when you set up a payroll deduction, it's the same amount every payroll. But really it's up to the employer how frequently they want to entertain change requests from their employees, whether things change or don't change on a week to or payroll to payroll basis. Okay.
So that concludes our formal agenda for today. We do have a few more minutes for any additional questions that may want to be submitted. You could always email us at askrpb.org. Ask us at rpb.org. Thank you, Stephanie. Anytime you can email me, Michael Kimmel, Alice Gunn, Stephanie Berger, Robert Perry. I do want to thank Alice, Stephanie, and Robert for all they've done to bring the system to fruition. The fact that we're live, this has been a long project. And we're really excited about this for you and making our relationship with you stronger than ever. And we have a late breaking question coming in. I use an outside payroll service. How would that work for Roth?
Well, I would say that you're not alone. Most people probably use outside payroll services. So, for example, RPB uses Paychex. We would call Paychex our payroll vendor, and we would say, hey, we would like to offer Roth. Can you please set up a post-tax payroll deduction for us? And they would say, sure, welcome to the century. Everyone else out there has been doing it, So we're finally catching up with everyone else, and payroll providers will not be surprised with your request, because this is something that they do for a lot of other people.
Can an employee participate in the retirement program even if the employer does not contribute a portion?
Yes, the answer to that is yes, through the elective salary deferral method only. So you would have to have the money withheld from your salary by your employer, and your employer would have to remit those funds to the RPB via MyRPB.
As long as you're a member of one of those professional
As long as
organizations.
Yes, as long as you're eligible to be contributing to the retirement plan.
With that, that concludes our webinar for today. Wishing you all a restful summer. I know what it's like towards the latter part of the summer, getting ready for the high holidays. So hopefully between now and maybe August, you guys can all take a little bit of a breather. I know that I'm looking forward to having my staff take take just a moment of a breather. But of course, we are always here for you as we're getting ramped up for the new plan year. Anyway, enjoy the rest of your week, and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.